Hey everyone, I'm Anya Esma, and today I want to talk to you about the That Girl routine, how it relates to tarot, what my criticism is of it, and a lot of other things. Basically, I just had this idea that it would be fun to make a tarot spread which goes in accordance with the That Girl aesthetic that is going around social media. And as I was writing the video, I was like, well, I kind of have to give some context on the aesthetic itself, on my criticism of it, and what I think of it. But still, I thought it was fun to make a spread. So what this video is going to look like is that I'm going to give a brief sum up of what That Girl is, or what it is, like the cultural phenomenon. Then some critical reflections on why I think it's maybe not cool. Then where I do think it can be useful and why I decided to make this spread anyways, and what we can learn from That Girl. And then fourth, I will go through the tarot spread with you and just take you through the spread positions for a tarot spread or oracle spread or whatever you want to use. So yes, you can also use them as journaling questions, obviously, like every tarot spread, but because my channel is mostly about tarot, I always say tarot. Anyways, I'm rambling already. I haven't filmed a video in 3 months probably, or more than that. My hair is still slightly wet, which is why it is less shiny than usual probably. For any detective noticing that. So it's still in the air drying process because I never blow dry my hair. I would never do that. So yeah, it's still drying. So first of all, what is the That Girl aesthetic, or the That Girl routine, or the That Girl mindset, whatever you want to include in all of this? It's like a whole cluster of things. So essentially it is an image of an idealized life that is full of healthy habits, just chock full of anything that our society nowadays and spiritualists as well consider healthy and good for your mind, good for your physical health. And it's kind of taken to the extreme, and people show that on social media, and you're like, wow, this person has the perfect life. They live an absolutely healthy life, a healthy morning routine, like every damn day. Essentially, That Girl lives in a perfectly decorated apartment, probably beige or white, very clean, always clean. She does yoga in the morning. She has an extensive skincare routine, probably drinks like matcha, chia smoothies every morning. You know, the perfect morning routine. Journals regularly, works out every day, probably, maybe even meditates, and does all of that seemingly at the same time every single day of her life, posts about it on social media, you know, and you get this image of like, wow, this person has their life together because of these factors that we consider as having your life together, which is, I don't know, arbitrarily yoga, meditation, journaling, drinking matcha tea, working out. So to sum it up, she displays this image of being put together physically and mentally, so that you get the impression that this is truly someone who has control of their life, who has optimized their routines, who has optimized their physical and their mental health. It's almost, I feel sometimes, like a modern day princess, because you sort of feel like this person puts self-care first absolutely every day, like being your best self, your best put together self. Whether that is just for social media or in reality is an entirely different question, but that is the image that these people display, whether it's conscious or subconscious, and that's sort of how it became defined as the That Girl aesthetic. Okay, so let's talk about the sort of critical aspects of it, or what criticism I have for the That Girl routine, or the That Girl social media image, if you want to call it that. So first of all, it is obviously overly idealistic, and in that it makes you feel insufficient. If you look on social media, and most influencers display this perfect image of having a clean apartment, a perfectly decorated apartment, you feel bad about your own. If you see someone drinking a matcha green smoothie every morning, you're like, damn, why don't I do that? Why can't I manage to always have all the groceries in the house to do that? So I think at the end of the day, it creates this expectation of ourselves that can contribute to the anxiety and the perfectionism that is perpetuated by social media in so many ways. And the that girl aesthetic is one of the expressions that makes us feel just shitty about ourselves sometimes, because we feel like we don't have our life that put together, and it would be a good thing if we had it that put together. Now, the second criticism would be that it is definitely mostly white women who sort of display this aesthetic, and that has sort of become the core of it. So there is a little bit of this white idealism going on with this concept, which is, of course, always a pretty critical and pretty strange and doubtful thing. Because it becomes sort of a white fantasy of living this perfect life, sort of removed from troubles, and fully living your privilege of being able to afford all these things, having the time to do all these things. And in that way, it goes into a pretty problematic area. And adding to that, it is also appropriative in a lot of the activities or exercises or whatever you want to call it. A lot of the methods used in the that girl aesthetic or the that girl routine are appropriative. For example, yoga or gua sha is often a part of it as well. If you go into the more spiritual corner, there's probably also people cleansing their spaces by smudging with white sage, which is also appropriative. And it's just this mashup of whiteness and everything that is self-care related, picked from like anywhere in the world. So it creates this full picture of a fantasy life that is very much associated with whiteness and with practices that were appropriated by white spiritualists, by New Age people a lot of the time. And then the third criticism I also want to address is that I think the idea of always having to be your best self and always having to bring your best self to the table, bring your best self to every day, I have a lot of doubts about that, because a lot of the time it's just about performing in a capitalist society. The reason that you are being pushed to bring your best self is so that you are as productive as possible while still being healthy and happy and looking put together and portraying this outwardly. Being kind to everyone, you know, it kind of goes into the whole toxic positivity area as well, where you always have to be positive, you always have to push away negativity. And I think in that way, it is very important, if we sort of buy into this that girl aesthetic or that girl routine, that we think about, why am I doing this? Who am I doing it for? Am I doing it truly for my own well-being? Or is in the back of my mind that I'm doing this to be more productive? I'm doing this not to be more healthy, but to be more healthy in order to be productive, or to be more put together when other people ask me, what is my daily routine, etc. So are you truly doing it for your own well-being? Or are you doing it to sort of perform and also just create this image towards other people? And I think it's important that, as much as I love self-development, we do have to give ourselves permission and recognize that we cannot be our best selves, whatever that even means, every single day. And that is absolutely okay. And no amount of forcing ourselves into self-care methods and into taking care of ourselves can change that sometimes. That's just how life is. You're not going to be your absolute 110% best self every single day, and that's totally fine. Now, with all this criticism, I do want to say that I think there is some value that we could draw from this sort of phenomenon that has been going on, called the that girl aesthetic or that girl routine, whatever you want to call it. because I think it has some lessons for us in how we as a society view being perfect and view being put together. And it can help us when we deal with stuff like depression or difficulty in life. And the reason I say that is because if you don't look at it as a completely idealized world that you want to live in, but rather as a set of self-care methods that you can engage in when you feel negative or feel depressed or just feel bad about yourself, it can be helpful. It can be inspiring, and by following some of these that girl activities, you're kind of creating an illusion for your mind of having more control than you feel that you maybe have, especially if your apartment is a mess, or you're dealing with a depressive episode, or, you know, life is just difficult. You don't have time to properly clean. You don't have time to work out. Then engaging and kind of tuning into this that girl archetype. Whoa, I just called it an archetype. I never actually thought about it as an archetype, but it sort of is at this point. Interesting. So tuning into that can improve your mental health because it helps you stick to certain self-care mechanisms that will help you. Obviously, that is not always the best solution because it's just kind of delaying the problem. Of course, you want to do shadow work. Of course, you want to seek therapy possibly, but it can help on those days where you're like, damn, I've been in a hole for, I don't know, a week or longer than that. I need to pull myself out of it. Tuning into something like that can be helpful. Tuning into an energy like the that girl energy where you tell yourself, I can be that girl, I can do it, and actually shower, clean your apartment, do whatever, you know, even if it's just something small. It's sort of, it has become associated with this paragon of self-care, I feel, in our society. And that can be a helpful archetype if you use it correctly. And if you use it responsibly, not to shame yourself and be like, well, my apartment doesn't look like that. My morning routine doesn't look like that. I don't reflect about my life every single day, you know? If you go into that space, it becomes negative. If you use it responsibly and say, hey, it's kind of like a fun little game of where I try to be that girl, it can be a little bit of magic added to your day and a little bit of a better routine possibly. And I think at the end of the day, it's a bit like putting yourself absolutely first, not starting work before you haven't, whatever is good for you, written a journal entry or done yoga or done a workout, even if you feel like you don't have time for it. And I think that has an immense power to just be like, no, I'm not going to start work until I've actually done this, until I've actually taken care of myself. Okay, now that we've talked about the difficulties with this concept, the criticism, and what I do think we can draw from it, I want to show you the tarot spread. I do have a few disclaimers for that because it's not about creating a that girl life from scratch. If that was the intention of this tarot spread, then I would probably ask stuff like, how can I make my space more inviting? What does my health need, etc. But it's not about the whole like wholesome thing. It's just sort of a band-aid. It's a band-aid if you're not feeling great and you want to start the day in a positive way. You can do this tarot spread, or you can use it as journaling prompts, whatever you want to use it as. The first question is, what is a strength I can bring to every situation today? I want to avoid the whole best self rhetoric here, because easily you can say, how can I bring my best self to every situation today, you know? If you want to ask that, go ahead, but I think it's more likely that you get a strong and concrete response if you ask something like, what is a strength I can bring into every situation today? Because whatever card you draw, it will be pretty clear what your strength is and what strength you will need during the day. The second thing is, what will I learn today if I keep my mind open? I think one of the things I consider to be a good start to the day is that you sort of open yourself up to the world rather than always keeping an armor on and kind of having to be on the defensive. And I think that's what the second question is for. You don't have to be open all the time, obviously, but this is just about self-development, about being able to take a lesson from the day. And in the evening, you can look at that card and be like, so that's the context that it came from. That's why it came up. because then you've lived through the day and you can see, what was this lesson? What did I learn today? Then the third question is, how can I handle difficult situations that I encounter during the day? Now, this is sort of like the first question about strength, but it is also about how you can handle these situations, because maybe the way you're supposed to handle them is to just leave them be. And the cards could be telling you that, not engage with everything with full strength. So that's the third question. How can I handle difficult situations today? Especially if you're struggling, or if you are sort of in a little bit of a hole, it can be helpful to have that card and remember it throughout the day and be like, okay, things are getting difficult. I drew this card in the morning. How can that help me right now? And that is actually it. I didn't want to make this tarot spread too over the top, because it should be feasible to do every day. So I just did a little bit of a 3-card morning routine spread, basically, that helps you get into a state of possibly openness, or a state of feeling your own strength, your own capabilities, and helping you throughout the day. So that's the purpose, not to go super deep and waste your whole morning, basically. Not waste, but you know what I mean. All right, so thank you so much for watching this. Let me know what you thought of this. Let me know what you think of the that girl aesthetic, the that girl phenomenon, the that girl life. I've said that girl like 500 times in this video. It's so weird. Yeah, let me know what you think of it. Let me know what you think of the spread. Let me know if you try it. And I will see you very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching. And do subscribe and like the video if you haven't yet.